Good afternoon, everybody. Good to go? Take that silence as a yes. For the record, my name is Danny Smythe. I'm the Chief of Police here in Winnipeg. My purpose today is to report on an incident that occurred yesterday at an apartment on University Crescent. At approximately 2:20 p.m., police were summoned by a caller regarding a male who was armed and acting erratically in a suite within the apartment. Two officers were dispatched to the apartment to assist, and upon arrival, they encountered multiple people inside the suite, including a man armed with two knives. Our officers moments later were involved in a use of force encounter that resulted in the male being shot by one of our officers. Immediately afterwards, the officers provided first aid, they called for backup, and they called for paramedics. The paramedics were on scene where they treated the male and transported him to hospital. However, he later succumbed to his injuries at hospital. Of course, because it involved a death, there was an IAU notification, and of course, they are going to take jurisdiction and investigate the matter further. The male won't be identified at this time. As I explained earlier in the week, whenever there's a matter involving IAU, it's their responsibility to do the notification, including the next of kin notification. I can tell you that the male was a 19-year-old male, and there were two other adults in the suite at the time, a 19-year-old woman and a 21-year-old man. We don't know much about the male. We've had I think we had one other encounter with him sometime last July where we assisted him by providing him with a ride. But he has no other record with us and certainly no criminal record. We think he may have been a student at the university. That's all I really have to share with you at this point. As you say, IAU will take it from here. I'll answer what questions I can, but we don't really know very much about this.
Do you know what the three were doing in the suite together?
No, I don't. I believe they were residents at the suite. It's not clear to me whether the male was a resident there or a visitor.
And did these three people know each other?
It would appear so. We were called by somebody within the suite.
Okay, so you got the information from somebody within the suite.
That's right.
Okay, one of the three or anybody else, somebody else from the suite?
One of the three.
Oh, okay.
Was it, you said that the male was acting erratically. Was this some sort of medical incident? Was he under influence?
So that kind of detail, we don't probe into that once there's a death now. Those kind of things will all be looked at by IIU. We had our original call from one of the residents within the suite that just said he was acting very erratically and that he was armed. That was the purpose of us being dispatched there.
Did he attack one of the officers? Or
Have no idea. Again, as soon as there's a death involved, we kind of put the brakes on investigating it. It's not our jurisdiction to investigate. So we really preserve the scene, preserve the witnesses, and notify IAU so that they can come out and start the investigation.
And you mentioned the others, everybody else is safe.
Yeah, everyone else is safe and they'll be considered witnesses, and my understanding is IAU spoke with them yesterday already.
And do you think this was a sort of a hostage-like situation?
No, I don't get that sense from the original information, but the caller was quite concerned.
Do either of the other two witnesses have any involvement with police?
I don't think so. I had no reason to believe that there were any other involvement with that suite or with those people.
And were the other two students at the university?
I don't know if they were students or not. Clearly, they're young people. I don't know if it was a roommate situation or not. That's the kind of thing that'll be up to IAU to probe a little bit.
So you mentioned there was the three people had one 19-year-old male, one 21-year-old male, and one 19-year-old woman, right?
That's right.
And all three are possibly students.
Possibly,
Okay.
This is the second officer-involved incident within a week. Can you speak any to that element of this?
well, very different events, very different circumstances on both of them. Clearly, they're not related, but we go to thousands of calls every week, and we deal with what we have when we get a call to a call.
And since he brought up that case, any update on that, on the Kirby Street situation?
Well, from our perspective, it's pretty much done. The homicide is still being worked on. IAU is still continuing with their work. They won't report to us until their investigation is done, and then if they don't report to us, they'll report publicly to everyone.
Now, there was an element in the Ferdy Street incident that, whether it related to the homicide or that's also on that same day, can you speak any more to that element of that?
Well, the homicide was earlier in a couple of days earlier, but we believe that the male that was involved, the male that was shot by police, was a person of interest in the homicide.
Okay, can you speak any further than him being a person of interest? Or?
No, I don't have anything to provide you in terms of an update.
Anything more?
I think there's some other news that Danny's going to report on. So.
Yeah, onto the Flora Avenue.
Yeah, we'll let Danny report on it.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Danny McKinnon, Public Information Officer. The second matter I'd like to discuss is a homicide investigation that is currently pending. On December 30th, approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon, police responded to the 200 block of Flora Avenue for suspicious circumstances, and upon arrival, a deceased male was located outside. Investigators have determined the deceased is a victim of homicide, and he has been identified as 20-year-old Brooklyn Elijah Hebert of Winnipeg. Now, the homicide unit is seeking any information from the public, as we commonly do, to assist in this investigation, including any potential video surveillance in the area or anybody who may have had recent interactions with the deceased Brooklyn Elijah Hebert. And of course, if you do have any information, any little bit may be helpful, please call the homicide unit at 204-986-6508, or you may also do so anonymously through Crime Stoppers. There's a tip phone number or also an online winnipegcrimestoppers.org link. I can take some questions.
You say, no, he was located outside. You say where outside? Was it a specific residence he was outside of or in a back lane, something? Can you speak to where outside?
So it was not a residence. That 200 block does have some community areas as well as residents, but this was not a residence. He was located outside a church.
Oh, so it was a church in 200 block of Flora Avenue. Is it around Cycle 262 Cycle?
I don't have the exact address.
What sort of injuries are we talking here? How was he located?
I wouldn't be able to elaborate on that. And of course, we never speak on the manner of death. That will be always determined by the medical examiner.
And regarding the identification of the victim, any more information about the victim, where the 20-year-old Brooklyn, like any more information about him, where is he from?
Yeah, I can say a little bit. He was known to police. What I can say is why we are asking if anybody has had any recent interactions with him at all. He was not reported as a missing person, but he did not stay in permanent residence. So he did move around a little bit, but he was certainly known to frequent that area. So if you were to look on the map, it's considered the North End and Lord Selkirk Park neighborhood. So that is important in terms of people potentially having some home video surveillance to, maybe take a peek back in the last week or so.
So he didn't live there exactly, he was just moving around that area, that wasn't.
Yeah, no, he did not live there.
Okay.
Can he be, I don't want to say defined, was he homeless or did he have a fixed residence?
Well, no, as I just mentioned, he was known to, move around different places, perhaps frequent some of the shelters, some of the social services in that area, perhaps some other residents, but he did not have a permanent address.
And I'm assuming the investigators have reached out to the various homeless shelters to see if anyone can add anything to this?
Well, I can say that the homicide unit has already began a very widespread canvass of the entire area.
Did he have any specific connection to the church that he was found outside? Was there any services that he was accessing there, or?
I don't know that. I probably wouldn't be able to tell you the services for privacy reasons. But what I can also just mention is that he was known to have some struggle with drug addiction. He may have had some gang affiliation. And I'm just mentioning that because we're really asking for anybody who may have had any contact with Mr. Hebert to please come forward. That would be very helpful to the investigators at this time.
Do you know what his last known location was, or where he was last known to have
No.
been?
Any other questions?
This is by our count, the 42nd homicide of the year. Can you speak to, this is the fifth straight year Winnipeg's had more than 40. It's less than last year, but can you speak to this year's homicide?
Well, I don't know if Chief, you want to talk about that, but you know what, overall, we've trended in that direction in terms of some of the violence that we've experienced. We know that, we see that through the numbers in the annual report. Gun crime has gone up, edge weapon crime has gone up.
One last question. There was a shooting last night here at the Mary's at the Hookah Lounge at 1:30 a.m. Today morning. Any update on that?
So that's not something I'm going to talk about today. We're sticking to these two releases. I suspect we'll have something further in the next day or so.
Okay.
Thank you.
And it looked like Chief Smythe wanted to respond to my question about 42 homicides. But
Well, all I would say to that, Glenn, is
sorry, I shouldn't.
it's been a trying few years for our community, and I should add for communities across the country. We've all gone through major trauma with the pandemic. We're seeing the strain that addiction has brought, that mental health has brought. We are seeing the impact of, as Danny mentioned, the number of guns that are being encountered on the street. So I don't think there's any one thing, but I think we're seeing a myriad of things that has contributed a lot to our homicide count in the last few years. We had certainly hoped that it was going to be much lower than it was this year, but it's been a very difficult 2 months since November. I think this is our 14th homicide since November 1st. So it's, we were on a pace to be in the 30s, which would have been more normal prior to the pandemic. But with that spike in the last 8 weeks, we found ourselves climbing back into the 40s.
Any concern about overtaxing the homicide investigators?
Always. Those guys work very, very hard. As you know, during the pandemic, we increased to a third shift in there. And, they've been working pretty steady ever since. And every now and again, we have to rely on our other major crimes units to fill the slack. They're very dedicated. And so far, they're managing their clearance rate, which means that they've arrested people responsible, who they believe are responsible, still is amongst some of the highest in the country with 80 to 90% clearance rate.
The year has just begun. It's the first day of the new year. What does the police, what's the message from Winnipeg police to the community here? What are the expectations from the community should have from the police?
Well, of course, we all want to thrive in the community. I was reminded as I was reflecting last year, we had the Police World and Fire Games last summer, and just walking around the community, it was really nice to see there were a lot of people out and about really enjoying themselves in the community, a lot of tourists in there. We hope that our presence in the community, that kind of thing will continue. As much as we don't like to talk about doom and gloom all the time, the reality is that's some of the realities of living in bigger urban centers, but overall, this is a pretty good city to live in.
And any goals for the new year?
Well, as you know, I'm retiring come summertime, so I'll have a whole different perspective when summer arrives. But certainly for us, we're hiring a lot right now. We're seeing, the baby boomers and the Gen Xers heading out the door. So it's a time of regeneration for us too. Lots of new young people coming on the job.
One last thing, over at the Forks right now, there's a big New Year's event going on. We're talking about violence going on in the city right now. What does it say that some of these events are now being held during the day, and they're trying to make it more family friendly given past years? And
I kind of take the Forks at face value when they tried to pivot and to make it more family friendly. They did that for Canada Day as well. So I don't think that's a reflection of them being worried about violence at the site there. They just made a pivot to be involved in more family oriented things that would happen during the day. So they've gone away from the fireworks, right? So that used to be one of the events that they would do. Fireworks are at night, but I don't think it's a reflection of the safety of the area.
But is there a particular reason for not having fireworks,
I can't speak for them. That's a very deliberate decision that they made. They filled that with other activities that are more conducive to being done during the day.
Thank you all for coming.